Welcome to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Klein, co-founder and CEO, along with my husband and company visionary, Devin Klein.
And together, with our amazing team, we are going to help you push past your limits, not just physically in our gyms, but right here, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually on the Burn Bootcamp podcast.
Together, we will take on challenges and break through barriers to transform into the best possible version of ourselves. We are more than a gym. We are a community. Your community. Let's go, Burn Nation.
All right, Burn Nation, welcome back to episode 512. You have DK and Trish in the building as always. We're talking about how to use carbs for energy and performance. Carbs are not the enemy. Carbs are our friend, but we got to use them strategically. We're going to go into all of that today. Trish, are you excited for today's podcast?
I am. I think there's going to be a lot of myths that we can bust here.
I think so too. I think, we are going to kind of break down carbohydrates. What are they? Carbohydrates for fat loss, for performance. We're going to get into some kind of nerdy stuff too, but I think it's really important to underline some of the practical advice that we'll give with the actual science behind it, because anybody can open up an Instagram account and go to ChatGPT and they can regurgitate what ChatGPT says. And it's not always right, okay? And it's not always right for you because your goals are very particular. And we want to make sure that we are being particular when we talk about carbs, their use of energy and performance. But, as always, we got some burn gear rocking on this episode already. All roads lead to camp. I got the All Roads Lead to Camp shirt on. Hold on, I got to stand up and show the people.
I do like that shirt.
You like this one?
A lot.
See it right there?
Look at how well it matches your shorts, too.
I did that on purpose.
Of course you did.
All roads lead to camp. Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Yeah. No, I have the same shirt on. I wore on a recent podcast because I just love it so much. So if you haven't bought it already, you need to go pick it up. It's a nice little, here. It's a nice
Shop.burnbootcamp.
Sports bra.
.com. That is, that is cute. It's like and it also the jean jacket, over the top. You can like layer it in, vibe it all up. Activewear. Shop.burnbootcamp.com. Burn Active. Check it out. We've got all types of stuff on here. So if you see something out in Burn Nation that you're just not sure if your gym has it, we probably have it here online. Shop.burnbootcamp.com. And we got a promo code for you, BurnPod. And what happens when they use BurnPod, Trish?
You get 10% off your full order, Devin.
Full order. Yeah. And if you order $150 or more, because you need your Afterburn whey protein, you need some Afterburn peanut butter bars, and you need your pre-workout, Ignite, get that, and All Roads Leads Camp shirt, and all of a sudden you get free shipping, shows up on your doorstep, you don't have to pay for it. It's the best of both worlds. All right? So we're going to get into the podcast today. Segment one we're just gonna really talk just like baseline about what carbohydrates are, what carbohydrates do. We got some clips that we're gonna share with you from the experts out there in the world. But we got like 4 segments today that we're gonna go through here on episode 512. And we did some, Chelsea, what episodes were the protein ones? We did I believe it was episode 506 and 507.
Yes.
Those were, guys, we went deep into protein, all right? The superstar of all macronutrients on episode 506, and then I broke it down on episode 507 on an Ask Devin Anything episode. It's all things protein. That's the superstar of the macronutrients. We're just moving on to carbohydrates, right? It's, a lot of times like the unsung hero of the macronutrients. It's the one that gets all the bad rap.
It's demonized,
it gets demonized. Why do you think it gets demonized? Is it just pop culture? Like, what is it?
I think so, Devin. Because I think a lot of the unhealthy, use air quotes, foods are usually a carb. So I think that if I had to guess, that's where it comes from.
Not all carbohydrates are made equal. That is for sure. We're going to talk about preferred sources, not preferred sources. We're going to talk, like I said, about some processes, some metabolic, energetic processes that, you kind of use carbs in some weird and different and really interesting ways. And so we're going to get into it. Segment one here is like, I think we need to set the baseline of what are carbohydrates? What do carbs actually do? Have you ever had a preconceived notion of this? And I know obviously you're educated now, but was there a time when you were like, I'm not going to eat carbs because the carbs are the enemy?
Oh, for sure. I remember back in the day when magazines were really popular, like before Instagram days, when they would tell you like, eat this, not that, to like get this body. And it was like, carbs are bad, don't eat carbs. So I for sure fell for that trap a long time ago.
Well, here's what happened. In the early 90s, our government introduced us to this thing called the food pyramid, right? And the food pyramid was really upside down. It was backwards. And the high glycemic carbs, like cereals and wheat bread, those were the foundation of the entire food pyramid. If we could pull the food pyramid up here, we're going to see it. And at the top of the food pyramid, was like you want little fats. And look, it's like cheese and French fries, and there's pretzels, and there you can kind of see, if you want to show this graphic here. This graphic is a good representation of why carbs are demonized. Well, because when you eat pretzels and you eat, Chex Mix and you eat Lucky Charms and you eat bread, you're going to get really high glycemic. We'll measure this. We'll talk about this today on the glycemic index. But you're going to get really high glycemic carbohydrates. And those are going to be the carbs that should be demonized because they're not the healthiest for you. And those fats, those oils up top, those were the things that were once demonized, which turns out not to be true. Okay? So when you hear the scientists of the world kind of say, I know this thing to be true, you need to be skeptical. Because what they should be saying is, based on the information that I have today, I believe this to be true, then that's somebody that you can listen to. Because if you go back, trans fat used to be like widely accepted as healthy, and now we 1,000% know it's not healthy. High glycemic carbohydrates like bread, like we were talking about, used to be widely accepted as the foundation of the American diet. We now know that there's a big difference between a donut and broccoli. There's a big difference. We're going to get into the glycemic index in a little while, but let's first, Trisha, break down what are carbohydrates before we get into like how to use them. First of foremost, it's the preferred source of energy for the body. A carbohydrate, all carbohydrates, by the way, everybody, are sugar. Okay, it's glucose, not table sugar, but glucose, which is the body's main primary source of energy. You have a secondary energy system in fat, your stored body fat. We're going to talk about this. Don't let me get ahead of myself here. But there's three kinds of what you would call carbohydrates. There's simple to complex. There's kind of two forms of simple carbohydrates. There's monosaccharides. Okay, that's glucose, fructose. You have disaccharides, sucrose, lactose, maltose, which are combinations of the single sugar monosaccharides, mono meaning one, di meaning two. And a disaccharide is like a combination of a monosaccharide. Now, you don't really need to know that, but what you do need to know is that the preferred source of fuel is glucose, okay? Then there's this thing called complex carbohydrates, or polysaccharides, starches that come from plants. You have glycogen, which, by the way, is a simple sugar, a glucose. And when you eat a carbohydrate, it all breaks down into glucose, raises your blood sugar levels, which raises your insulin. Insulin then takes glucose and converts it into a polysaccharide called glycogen, and then you store that in your muscles and your tissues. And then you have fiber. So starch, glycogen, and fiber are polysaccharides. Now, you don't need to know this stuff, okay? And I said we're going to talk a little bit about like terminology, but you don't really need to know that. All you need to know is simple versus complex, okay? Simple versus complex carbohydrates. And not even really that you need to know that per se, because at the end of the day, you could talk about carbohydrates all we want to, but fat loss, muscle gain is a surplus or a deficit of what, Trish?
Calories.
Calories.
Say it louder for the people in the back, Devin.
It is a surplus or a deficit of calories. Now, calories are number one.
Yes.
Quality calories in, calories out. We say it on the podcast before. QCICO. That's the king. All right, don't get it twisted, people. Energy in, energy out. If you're telling me that you should be losing body fat, you should be losing mass because you have a calorie deficit, but you're not, then you don't have a deficit, you have a surplus.
Yes.
And I'm sorry that you think that way, but you are misinformed. And we need to go back, we need to actually log these things down, and we need to actually see or your total daily energy expenditure is off. Meaning the amount of calories that you think you expend versus what you actually expend. So it's just expenditure versus intake. It's a math equation, okay? But that's not it. That's not it. And this is where carbs really come in. There's a hormonal effect of food. Carbohydrates have, all macronutrients have an effect on insulin. Carbohydrates have a direct major effect on insulin. There's a hormonal effect of food. This is where the glycemic index comes in. Meaning that when you eat a carb, its simple form, the main source of fuel, the preferred fuel, glucose. Okay, that glucose, it enters your bloodstream. Your blood sugar is regulated. Okay, the pancreas secretes insulin. Okay, insulin is going to do one of two things. It's going to say, store this glucose as glycogen in the muscle, or it's going to say, store this glucose as fat. It does one of those two things. It just ships it. Mm-hmm. That's all it does. So once your muscles and your liver have all the glycogen that they can take, then glucose will store as fat. Okay, so we got to stop there because there's a lot of, I'm not going to use more science words, but that's about as many science words as I want to use. But that's the hormonal effect of food actually does matter. Because when you do eat the calories, that glycemic index, okay, what that's measuring, if it's 55, you could go ahead and pull the glycemic index chart up, Chelsea. The glycemic index chart is going to basically tell you what carbohydrates, like what their relationship is with your blood sugar. There's another one called the insulin index. But the glycemic index is going to say these carbohydrates increase your blood sugar rapidly or slowly. Okay, rapidly or slowly. So let's take a look at some of these things. The bottom of the food pyramid in the early 90s, which by the way has changed now, they changed it, had bagels and white bread and wheat bread. The measurement, the index for the glycemic index is actual glucose itself, which is at 100. Look at bagels and white bread.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I was just thinking about eating a bagel and white bread, and you think about how do you feel? I do a lot of how do I feel after I eat this? And after you eat a bagel or just a couple loaves of white bread, if that's your flavor, like you don't, at least I don't feel great. I feel heavy, I feel bloated, I feel gross. But if I eat something that's on the lower side, I feel like I actually have energy, which is really where all this is like common sense a little bit. You should be, again, back to what we talk about a lot, intentional with what you're putting in your body.
So here's what happens. When we eat too many carbohydrates, okay, or let's put this in a better way. When we eat too much energy, when we have too many calories, which is the unit of energy, okay, the carbohydrate will break down into glycogen, like we said, and it will top off the muscles, store as glycogen, and it will top off the liver, all right? This is like, I'm not going to go into much else there, but then if you're over-indexed on calories, then you will store glucose as fat, okay? So there's something I want to say about this, because not only do you use that carbohydrate for rapid energy to fuel your workouts, use that stored glycogen to contract your muscles. You also store excess as fat, but people don't realize something, that once you store calories as fat, which is one of the jobs of insulin as the storage hormone, what happens is that can reverse right back out. Okay, so if you store calories as fat, and then let's just say overnight when you don't eat food, you can go into lipogenesis, so you can go into lipolysis rather, which is like the act of reversing the fat from triglycerides, which are a backbone of glycerol and then 3 fatty acids. If you break that bond of that molecule, the glycerol actually turns back into glucose. And so you're stabilizing your blood sugars when, I know this is kind of confusing, but when you're stabilizing your blood sugar overnight while you're burning fat, and this is why fasting is safe. This is why you can fast overnight.
Yep.
And this is why you wake up the next morning feeling lean, because your body goes into lipolysis or burning fat for energy. So you effectively have 2 energy systems, the rapid energy from glucose from carbohydrates, and you burn fat from energy from lipolysis. And so this is important because we have a lot of people out there who want to actually burn fat. They don't want to eat carbohydrates just for muscle performance. Part of their performance is I want to get lean and I want to make sure that I am burning fat. What are your goals right now? Let's talk through your goals.
My goals, I mean, it's interesting because I think I am more about how to fuel my body properly to not only have energy throughout the day, but then I want to be lean and strong at the same time. So I have to make sure I'm fueling my body properly. I hyper focus on protein. I think I've said that like 14 times on this podcast. And I use kind of carbs as like a supplement. I haven't really hyper focused in on carbs really. When I think about macros, I don't track my macros currently. I only track calories and I track protein, and then everything else I kind of just like let happen naturally. So I don't really know if I have like a specific goal in mind for what I want, but I know I want to be just lean.
That is a much better way to talk about it. Rather than all the gibberish and having to know all the things, the best way to reach your goals is to eat your protein and let the rest fall where it may. You just have to watch calories in, calories out.
Yeah.
If you're gaining a little bit of weight, or the best way, guys, is to like wake up in the morning. Are you feeling leaner or not? Mm-hmm. Are you feeling leaner or not? If your goals are to, gain muscle and to maximize that gain, if you want to maximize your gain, then you're going to overeat in a surplus in calories. You're not going to feel leaner in the morning. If your goal is to maximize fat oxidation, then you are going to want to have a little bit of deficit, and you're going to want to wake up in the morning feeling a little bit leaner. Most of us just want to stay in that really high protein, really high fat, moderate carbohydrate, and have like a 100 to 200 calorie surplus, and then don't eat overnight.
Yeah.
If you do that, you're going to get into that lipolysis I talked about. You're going to be burning body fat, but you're going to be having enough protein to sustain the muscle growth that you want to have.
I didn't know. I just learned something new because I always thought it was just like my head telling me that I felt leaner, but it's actually you are leaner because your body went through the lipolysis.
Yeah. It's that's just a fancy word for turning your fat, using your fat as energy. When you don't have any glucose.
That's cool.
Yeah. So you actually have these 2 energy systems, and your body either uses food for fuel or uses fat for fuel. Mm-hmm. And food actually, through this process, becomes fat. I mean, that's a very broad way to put it. And I don't want to, like I said, I could tell that I'm already probably confusing people. And sometimes I'll confuse myself if I go around, if I say too many words. But that's essentially it, right? There's calories in, calories out. Yeah. There's a hormonal effect of food. And the hormone effect of food really matters, right? And when it matters because insulin is so closely correlated, and insulin is going to be that hormone that tells your body to either store food as glycogen, as energy in your muscle and in your liver, and when that's topped off, it's going to go through another process, and it's going to store, if there's a surplus, it's going to store as fat. And then when you don't eat food, right, you deplete your glycogen stores, and now you need energy, so you go into lipolysis, and then through that process of lipolysis, you break that molecule, that triglyceride molecule, back into glucose. Now the difference is it's like that fat burning process is it's like the safety net. It's a much slower, more metabolically how do you say, intensive process. When you eat carbohydrates, I mean, you got 30 to 60 minutes before you start digesting, and those start to become readily available. Although there is a myth that you can eat like carbs like 30 minutes to 60 minutes before your workout, and your body has time to store that from glucose to glycogen, which is monosaccharide to polysaccharide. No, that takes energy and time. That doesn't happen. You actually use the stored glycogen in your muscle from like yesterday, mostly. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I have some questions. I feel like I could go on and on asking you questions. I think we need to do a topic just about like calories. Because like a lot of my questions are more about calories.
We can talk about your questions. Let's listen to Eric. Dr. Eric Bird's What is a Carbohydrate Simplified, so that we can stop going in circles here, and he can just kind of break it down, and then we can come back to some of your questions.
Are made up of sugars, starches, and fiber. The biochemical name for a carbohydrate
He's talking about polysaccharides.
is a saccharide. So basically, carbohydrates are a compound of these. These are saccharides, and carbohydrates are classified by the number of saccharides. The Greek word
I
for
thought this was supposed to be
saccharides
simple, Eric.
is sugar. Okay?
It's not simple.
Now we have monosaccharides. Okay? Mono means single or one. So a monosaccharide would be one of these. That would be glucose or fructose or galactose. This would be considered a simple sugar. You also have dextrose and others, but I'm going to keep it fairly basic. Next one, and there's 4, okay, is disaccharides. Okay, di means 2. 2 of these right here, okay? It's called 2 monosaccharides. So an example of a disaccharide would be like table sugar or sucrose. That's the same thing. Sucrose is composed of 2 of these, glucose and fructose. Another example would be lactose, milk sugar. It's composed of glucose and galactose, okay? So that's what a disaccharide is. Pretty simple. The disaccharide and these other 2 I'm going to talk about make up the complex carbohydrates, okay?
Okay, so yes, he's trying to break it down simply. This is basically what I was going over, and if you're watching, you have a visual of this now, and this is just the way that carbohydrates and sugars work. But I think the main deal here is that all carbohydrates break down in sugars. Fiber is a very unique one. You've heard like net carbs before. Well, fiber actually isn't digested. It's actually just a support system to help nutrient shuttling and things like that. So when you talk about net carbs, that's actually a real thing. I didn't get that for the longest time of like, why net carbs? Like I'm actually eating, but the fiber doesn't get digested. And so there's just some basic, simple information. Hopefully it's simple for you on how carbohydrates are really working. And, I think there's like a metaphor that I wanted to share to kind of simplify all this. Can I just do that?
Please.
Because this is probably going to be so helpful for people.
Okay.
I talk about glycolysis, which is using carbohydrates for fuel or glucose for fuel. And then lipolysis, which is using fat for fuel. Those are the 2 preferred fuel sources. There's a third one, but that's when you don't have any body fat, generally speaking under like 4% body fat. Then you'll start eating muscle.
Yeah.
But you're not going to eat, the body will go 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Right? So there's a big myth that when you fast, that you actually burn muscle. No. Can I explain why?
Yeah.
Because when you actually do the measurement, there's 2 reasons why you'll lose muscle on a fast. One, you aren't working out or putting your body under stress, mechanical tension. If you don't hypertrophy, you atrophy, no matter whether you're fasting or not. And then the measurement systems. So the measurement systems, like our InBody at Burn Bootcamp, measures, it sends an electrode or electricity through the body, measures water content. So glycogen has a property which is called hydrophilic, which means bonds to water. So if I deplete my glycogen, I have no more glycogen stores. And if I have no more glycogen stores, then my body goes to lipolysis using fat for fuel. Now, when I go to do that measurement and I read it, I've siphoned all the water out of my body, which is true, and you'll lose some water weight. But I didn't lose muscle weight. I just lost weight out of my muscle. Does that make sense? I didn't lose muscle tissue. I lost weight out of my muscle because the muscle is 76% water anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the myth behind why like people don't fast or they demonize fasting. It's not true.
And also it says like I know I've heard, I don't know if this is a myth, so please tell me, but that if you starve yourself for a long period of time, then your body, once you start eating, you'll gain weight faster because your body's like searching for the food, and then it's going to store it into fat because it's scared that you're going to then go do that again.
No, it's not scared that you're gonna, it's not going to store it as fat per se.
Unless you're in a calorie surplus.
Yeah, it's not scared. Your body doesn't get scared. The body doesn't optimize for your performance goals. It optimizes for survival. So no matter what meal you eat, there's always going to be a part of that gets stored off. Insulin will store that off as fuel for the future.
Yeah.
And there's, so your question, so you were confused on what again? Say that one more time.
So I know I've heard that people if you fast for a couple days, then you could be told that the second you start eating again, you will gain all that weight back that you maybe lost because your body is going to store it immediately as fat because it's
Got it. So we talked about the fat piece. Well,
Yeah.
the weight gain piece there's some truth to that because again, once you restore your glycogen, it's hydrophilic, it bonds to water. You're going to restore the water in your muscle too. And you're going to lose some water and then you're going to gain some water back. This is why it's really important to measure body fat, skeletal muscle mass, and the DEXA scan. Can you pull up the DEXA scan? I believe that is cutting edge right now in terms of the most precise measurement. It used to be the underwater measurements, and I believe, can you pull that up? Let's read that. I want to read that. Go back, blow that up for me, show it on the screen. The DEXA scan is also known as the DXA scan. It's a quick and painless procedure that uses low-dose x-rays to measure bone density. It's primarily used to diagnose or assess the risk of osteoporosis or osteopenia, conditions characterized by weak and brittle bones. The scan helps determine the amount of bone. Okay, so it's a bone scan essentially, but this is being used to measure like skeletal muscle mass and body fat. And this is the one, like if you are gonna like ever do any long-term fasting, like 3, 5, 7 days, which you need to be under the supervision of somebody that knows exactly what they're doing if you want to do that. That's not necessary, by the way, for like 99.999% of the universe. You should just, if you want to be healthy and have the benefits of fasting, like autophagy and lipolysis, burning fat for fuel, waking up leaner, then just overnight fast like we all do anyway. Remember, break fast breakfast, like we all should be going from like 8 or 9 at night after dinner to 8 or 9 in the morning where we do 12 hours anyway. And watch how lean you get if you don't wake up in the morning and give your body glucose in the form of carbohydrate, in which it then rapidly uses and disrupts lipolysis, because remember, the body has the energy system hierarchy. It's going to use carbs first, like glucose from carbs first, and then fat second. So
interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to give that metaphor for a moment because I want to this is important. So imagine that your body is like a hybrid car. You've got 2 fuel sources, right? The first one is gas. Okay. The second one is what would be electricity. Okay. So your body has 2 fuel tanks. The gasoline is the glycolysis, okay? That's the preferred fuel. That's what we want. The gas, the hybrid cars, they use gas first, and then they have the kind of backup generator in the electricity. And the other one, the lipolysis, is the electricity. So glycolysis, it's fast. Like what do we know about gas-powered cars? Fast, horsepower, go, combustion right now. And then what are most cars? Like maybe Teslas are a bad example of this, but what about like a Prius? When you smash the gas on a Prius, what happened for like the majority of the Prius cars?
You don't go very fast.
You don't go very fast, right? It's steady, it's efficient, it's built for the long haul.
Yeah.
So the glycolysis is like gasoline mode. It uses carbs for quick bursts of power, and this is useful for high intensity workouts, sprints. Athletic conditioning days, Metcon days. You know, it's also useful. Stored glycogen is also useful for muscle performance and ATP and the I won't get nerdy, but the citric acid cycle or the Krebs cycle is what they call it. So then you have that secondary energy system called lipolysis. So this system is using the stored energy, the stored electricity as clean, slow-burning fuel. So it's going to be in the background, and when you run out of gasoline, it's going to tap into that secondary energy source, and this is better for like the long-distance travel. Now, it's not as efficient, right? So don't think that you can like go into lipolysis using fat for fuel. Go back to that triglyceride molecule. When you break the triglyceride molecule, glycerol backbone, the 3 fatty acids, that's triglyceride. There's called scissor enzymes. It breaks that bond. The glycerol synthesizes into glucose, and then glucose is there, it's present, but it's not gonna be quick. It's not gonna fuel you in a couple hours, to be able to do a workout, and it takes a long time. So it's not an efficient way for you. It's not a performance-driven way. So we need, in order to perform in the gym, we need timely carbohydrates, and we're gonna go to the timing of carbohydrates for performance next, but does this help? I'm trying to make sure that something complex here, because it is complex. Like, there's no way around it. Yeah. Nutritional science, carbohydrates, the way the body uses them, it's very complex. And I'm trying to at least get us to a metaphor where it's pretty easy to understand.
Yeah, and I think that your example, your metaphor made sense to me.
Okay, all right. Let's stop there. Do you guys have any questions? Comment below if there's any questions. If you're a nutritional scientist, fact check me on any of these things that I'm talking about. I'm not pretending to be one. I'm just trying to do my best to educate people. I might have misspoke here and there. But at the end of the day, that's like generally speaking, the energy systems for the body. Anything?
Oh, I think also for the people that just want the basics, and I just want to reiterate that if you eat carbs, it's okay. It's not going to make you fat by any means. It's the calories that are going to make you fat. So just, there's one thing you take away from this. You need carbs. Devin just explained, and maybe you need to rewind and listen to that again just so you can really digest it. But you need carbs to fuel your body properly, especially if you're in the gym for performance.
So timing and performance. Let's go there. Performance is, who wants to perform better in their workouts, right? I know I do. So timing of carbohydrate is more important than timing of any macronutrient. And we've got a video that I wanted to play. This one is the ultimate carb. Let's play this one first. Ultimate carb rule for effective fat loss. I want to play that one to round out our last conversation, and then I'm gonna go into another video quickly called Does Timing Matter? So let's roll those 2 videos back to back.
A carb is a carb is a carb. Now, in some ways, this is true. In a lot of ways, this is true. And the meat and potatoes of what I'm saying here today is that we should not be focusing on the quality of carbohydrates as much as we should be focusing on the quality of fats. What do I mean by this? I mean that 80% of your focus should just come from protein in the first place. But if we look at the difference between a good carb and a bad carb, what is it? A good carb might be something like a sweet potato that has additional benefits to it, has additional carotenoids and antioxidants and flavonoids and insoluble fiber. It's a good carb. A bad carb would be bleached, refined sugar. Okay, but then when we get into the world of sugars, we have all kinds of different categories. So we have sweet potato over here being good, sugar over here being bad, but then within the sugar realm, we have good and bad too. We have honey, which actually seems to have positive effects on most people's metabolic health. And we have maple syrup, it's just about the same. We have dates, which are similar. And then we have refined sugar, coconut sugar, all these other ones, right? The difference in space between a good carb and a bad carb is actually quite small when you compare it to the difference between.
Okay, so maybe, I'm not sure that I'm buying that it's that small. The nutrient density that comes from, and he mentioned all this stuff, but I think he's underplaying how different they actually are. The difference between a sweet potato and a donut is pretty wide. It's pretty big in my opinion. And I'll tell you why I think it's big in my opinion. Because of the nutrient density, I think you're underplaying the nutrient density of a sweet potato. And the rapid usability of a donut, let's say, like the way that spikes your insulin, the way that affects your hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin, is going to leave you with cascading hunger effects down the line that I don't think 99% of people can really handle. Have you ever eaten a donut and then been hungry like 30 seconds later? I just, I work with thousands of people, you know that. Like I'm just skeptical about that advice. I would never sit down with someone and say, hey, the difference between a sweet potato and a donut, not that big. No, it's really big because the cascading effects on hunger hormones from eating a donut, I think can lead to it can lead to bad behavior. And so, yeah, if you're talking about like the pure science and you're talking about, mono, di, polysaccharide and, insulin spike, insulin index, glycemic index, and the impacts. Could you technically say, hey, eat a donut right after a workout to restore your glycogen? For sure. And the glycogen isn't going to, it's not going to differentiate between whether you got the glycogen from a sweet potato or a donut. But the nutrient density and the cascading behavioral effects of a donut versus a sweet potato and the psychological effects of that, I think, are far understated here in that clip. And I really like that guy too, by the way. But I just think that there's, I've just seen it thousands and thousands of times over the last 13 years that people are creatures of habit. And if you let them eat donuts and they think donuts are good, then donuts are great. And now all of a sudden you end up slowly over time cascading bad behaviors.
Oh, I have a question. And I see this on Instagram from fitness influencers. Often I've actually started to unfollow these types of people, but they're eating candy mid-workout. Can you explain to me why it's kind of similar to me? It's the same as the donut concept. I feel like if you want to have a donut because it's Saturday morning and your kids want to go have a donut, go enjoy a donut maybe. But I don't know if I am going to intentionally eat a donut or candy because it's going to fuel my workout. To me, that doesn't make any sense logically.
Yeah, well, I mean, logically and scientifically, it doesn't make sense for somebody to think that they can eat candy during the middle of the workout, which breaks down into glucose, which then is a monosaccharide, which then goes through a process to then turn back into a polysaccharide to then ship to the muscle to store as glycogen. That process takes time. Now, if their workout's 2 hours and they eat candy at the beginning of their workout, they might get some extra benefit from a glycogen perspective toward the end, but it's just bad advice to me. That's just people wanting to do something that is radically different to turn heads and get eyeballs. Listen, I'm all about health, and I'm all about the psychological benefits, the psychological ramifications of food. And a lot of times when influencers who are into fitness that don't understand psychology at the level that we do, there's a disregard for the actual core behaviors that are sparked when somebody that, the producers and I were talking about this off camera. It's like, if you're going to tell somebody that, let's just say, for example, candy during your workout is good, well, then candy then becomes good all the time.
Yeah. Right.
And people don't get it like you get it because you're this person that understands, you have a baseline understanding of how carbohydrates, the pathology of carbohydrates, how they digest and how they're used to fuel your workout. And yeah, you might be able to do that, but actually there is no difference between the glycogen replenishment, but it's all of the other, it's everything else, right? Mm-hmm. It's the health, it's the biochemical health, the immune health, it's the vitamins and the minerals that come with a sweet potato, for example, over a donut. And more importantly than all of the nutritional profile behind these different foods, it's the psychological effect of food that will kill people. Yeah. Literally, they will create this cycle of momentum around food. And when a donut becomes something that's good post-workout, then it becomes good everywhere. Now, with that being said, if you are going to eat a donut, the best time to do it is right after a workout. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's not. If you are going to eat candy, the best time to do it is right after a workout, not at night before you go to bed, where you spike your insulin up. And then what happens when we spike our insulin rapidly? What happens? We store glucose to glycogen, muscle liver gets topped off, and then it gets stored as body fat. But that's a good topic. It's a good topic.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, influencers. I still love you.
Well, they just are misinformed maybe too. So.
Maybe not. And maybe, and maybe not. And maybe, sometimes it's just kind of like we showed a couple clips last podcast. We were talking about protein where Jeff, what's his name? Great guy.
Nippard?
Nippard. I really like some of his stuff. He's short, he's concise. But when you talk about, you talk about that studies show, meta-analysis shows that the human body, you only need to take, 0.7 grams of protein per body pound to maximize muscle protein synthesis. It's like, yes, I heard that. I heard what you said, but I also know that the body is so efficient at using protein, biochemical function, like I mentioned, hormonal function specifically, and then you convert protein through gluconeogenesis, you convert protein into glucose, and then through liponeogenesis, you convert protein into fat, which is very, very rare for a human to get there unless their surplus is way above their total daily energy expenditure, because the body's very efficient at using protein. Mm-hmm. So I eat up to 2 grams sometimes in a day, and especially in a hypertrophy day. I'll eat 2 grams per my ideal body pound or body weight in protein, and my body's using almost all of that, if not all of that. So there's just nuances that's why I like long form, and sometimes we can jump from this thing to that thing to another thing, but if somebody takes the time to sit down and listen to the full podcast, then you're going to get a more well-rounded perspective. Yeah. And even if I'm wrong on a couple of these things, which I don't profess to be right on everything, but even if I'm wrong, I stand to be corrected. And at least, I went to the marketplace and said what I perceived at the time to be the truth. And can always be corrected, but I won't leave anything that I do know out intentionally just to create likes or views or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about timing for performance?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's really interesting. I was training for a half marathon recently, and I was starting to get a little bit more into timing for fuel, specifically carbs, because to the point that we were talking about with the candy, how you eat it at the beginning, because if you go for a long run or a long workout, you have to fuel your body properly, because you will feel at mile 11, in my case, like just dead, because you're running out of the source. So I would love to know, if a regular person, what does that mean for timing? If I'm not training for something specific, I'm just training for life, and I just want to get to camp and I want to have proper performance, what do I need to do?
Okay, so if you just want to train for performance at camp and you want to use carbohydrates strategically, and now that the carbohydrate breaks down into a sugar. The sugar is the glucose, the preferred source of fuel. That's a monosaccharide that goes through a process that turns the monosaccharide to a polysaccharide called glycogen that goes into the muscle. It stores as a polysaccharide in the muscle, ready, and the liver, but for this purposes, in the muscle, ready to go. That process takes a little time. Mm-hmm. So you can't wake up in the morning and deplete yourself all night of glycogen and then expect to have it readily available the next day. So this is why you hear athletes. We interviewed Kathleen Baker, who was a U.S. Olympian swimmer. Mm-hmm. Missy Franklin has also talked about this on the podcast. It's called carb loading.
Yep.
So before a hypertrophy or a strength day at burn, carb loading is a strategy that you can use the day before, mm-hmm. right? So I tend to do, now I'm going to go into this in the next podcast. On episode 513, I'm going to go into how I oscillate personally. I'm just going to give you guys my testimony, not that it's what you should do, but it's what I do to oscillate my carbohydrates and my fats from hypertrophy or strength workouts to conditioning workouts. Because I want to maximize lipolysis or using my fat for fuel on conditioning days, and I want to maximize using carbohydrates for fuel or glucose stored as glycogen on hypertrophy days, because I'm going to perform much better. So the day before a hypertrophy day, let's say it's Sunday, and I'm going to go and I'm going to carb load Sunday morning, and I'm then going to go into the gym expecting to perform well because I ate my instant oatmeal, right? Or I ate my steel cut oatmeal, which, by the way, glycemic index we can talk about here in a little bit. We can come back to that, but instant oatmeal is not made the same as steel cut oatmeal. Instant oatmeal is in the high, moderate to high, where glycemic index, where steel cut oatmeal is in low to moderate. So even in your oatmeal, the difference there matters. But regardless, for performance purposes, I want to load up on those carbohydrates without going kind of over my caloric total daily energy expenditure. And you want to keep your protein consistent on a daily basis. 1 gram per ideal body pound is good for most of us. Like I said, I can even go up to 2 grams per body pound because the body is so efficient at using protein. But 1 to 1.2 for most people if you're trying to maximize performance protein. And then you can kind of go 1 to 1.2 in carbohydrate too, right? So if you're 135 pounds, you take 135 grams of protein in, 135 grams of carbohydrate. And I want polysaccharide, complex carbohydrates, starches, mixed in fiber. I don't want simple carbohydrates like candy and donuts, right? Because that isn't going to, it's going to provide me a rapid spike of a blood sugar increase, a rapid spike of insulin. And there's maybe some benefits to the rapid spikes shooting off insulin into your body and then rushing that glycogen into your muscles and rushing all other nutrients into your muscles. So yes, there's some cases to be made for the influencer case, but for your performance in the gym, load up on good, clean, low glycemic, starchy carbohydrates the day before in the morning. Come to the gym the next day and you're going to perform much, much better. And then do your workout. Post-workout, you want to have an insulin spike. So this is where the influencer strategy of candy does have some truth to it. I think there's a little bit of truth in everything. But I prefer that you have a sweet potato, which is a polysaccharide, and then something that is like a banana that has a nutrient-dense profile, but will also cause that same spike in insulin that the candy would be doing to rush the nutrients into the muscle. Make sense?
Yep.
So pre-workout, about 24 hours, 48 hours before, carb load. Don't go over on your calories. And then post-workout, I recommend having a high protein, moderate carb meal that has a combination of maybe a monosaccharide and a polysaccharide, so like a banana and a sweet potato.
So on a conditioning day, though, you would have less carbs at that last meal going into?
Yeah, if I'm then going to condition, I'm going to keep my carbs low, and I'll keep my fats a little bit higher.
And then you'll eat your carbs after your workout to get the insulin spike.
Because when I keep my carbohydrates lower, what happens is then I don't have any glucose, right? And then I don't have any glycogen, and then I have my basal metabolic rate and my total daily energy expenditure for the rest of that day, right? So I'm gonna mostly have an insulin spike right after my workout via carbohydrate to ship nutrients to my muscle, and I'll reset some glycogen. But I don't want to be super high on my carbohydrates if I know next day is going to be a conditioning day, right? And then I can come back and say, all right, I'm going to restore my glycogen. I'm going to use that for my normal bodily functions for the rest of the day. I'm going to overnight fast. So I'm going to stop eating at 8, and then I'm going to wake up the next day at 8, and I might break my breakfast with high protein, high fat. Now it takes about 12 hours to deplete your glycogen stores. So now I don't have glycogen. What's the secondary energy system? Gasoline is glycogen. What's the secondary energy system?
Lipolysis,
fat.
Yeah.
That's the process of basically turning your fat into energy, right? Or fat oxidation. So yeah, I'm
oscillating
those things on a daily basis.
That was really interesting.
Yeah, and that's like, guys, that is like as complex as you can get in terms of like actually really nutrient timing. But some people are there. So
I think it's also just goes back to like your body is a machine. Like it needs to be fueled properly. Like intentionally thinking about the food you're putting into it, not just like feeding it whatever you want. It serves a purpose. And so I think that's just a reminder for me that carbs they serve a purpose, and I should do a better job at it.
Yeah, it's smart. You want to just be smart with your carbohydrates. Okay, there's no reason to eat donuts and candy, mostly for the psychological effect. If you want to eat donuts and candy, I have nothing against that. Just don't use it as some like good tool, some like preferred tool or preferred fuel source for the body.
Just know that it's bad. You're eating it. It's not great for you, but like everything in moderation a little bit to an extent.
For sure. I mean, and everything is always in moderation around here, right? Whether it's alcohol, whether we even say sugar in moderation. What we mean when we say sugar in moderation is we know that all carbohydrates are eventually sugar.
Yeah.
But what we really mean is like added sugars. What we really mean is those more simple sugars that are going to spike the insulin super high, because then you're just going to constantly spike your insulin over and over and over and over. And then those ghrelin hormones, we call it the gremlin. It's going to be an angry hormone that tells you you're hungry all the time because your body is now so sensitive to this insulin. Leptin, the hormone that tells you that you're full, is basically not going to have a voice anymore. And you're just going to become then a slave to this hunger hormone cycle of ghrelin constantly being at your throat saying, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, because you're constantly giving it this simple sugar that has this rapid spike. And when you have the rapid spike, blood sugar goes up. It's very almost directly correlated to the insulin spike. So we just want to be very smart about the carbohydrates that we're taking in. And not all carbohydrates are created equal. Yeah. Not all carbohydrates are even close to being created equal, because what we're forgetting sometimes out there in the world when I hear people talking is that there's a hormonal effect of the food. Yes. Calories in, calories out. There's a hormonal effect of the food. So let's let's end on a video. Let's end on Smart Carbs for Fat Loss video, complex versus simple carbs, by Dr. Jesse Aben. Breaks down just what we're saying, and maybe one more time. I want like repetition on the podcast. Repetition is the mother of all skill. And I want you guys to learn some of these concepts and principles so that you can use them intelligently in your own life.
Typically, when people talk about carbohydrates, they tend to divide them into simple versus complex. And this isn't really talking about the molecule itself as much as it is about the foods that they're found in. So simple carbohydrates are typically foods that provide you only with one nutrient, that is being carbohydrate or sugar. Foods like white pastas, white breads, snacks, cookies, soda, all the typical foods that we deem not so healthy. Now, on the other hand, complex carbohydrates are typically foods that contain carbohydrate in addition to other important nutrients that our body needs to survive and maintain its health. These foods include vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, whole grains, and they also provide you with nutrients such as fats, proteins, micronutrients like vitamins and minerals. Now, typically when people talk about
Okay, so just another reiteration there for you guys to really get what we're talking about here, and we hope that you do, and we hope that you learn something on this podcast, because carbohydrates are used for performance, right? And you can really move the needle from a muscle protein synthesis perspective, the generation of building new muscle when you time your carbohydrates the right way. But for 90% of us, just going back to the let's end this on the most simple note possible. Okay? It's what you said earlier, all right? Which was, you gain or lose mass by quality calories in, calories out The reason we don't say calories in, calories out is because there's a hormonal effect of food that we've learned now has to do with your carbohydrate selection and its relationship to insulin, okay? And if you just understand that quality calories in, calories out is the king, and you keep your carbohydrates 55 or under on the glycemic index, and just keep your protein high, those three things are pretty much what you need in order to see results in the gym. And by the way, the muscle you gain or lose has very little to do with the dietary protein or the dietary carbohydrates. It has most everything to do with mechanical tension or lifting weights to hypertrophy. 8 to 15 reps of any given exercise in a strength fashion to failure. And mechanical tension is what signals the body to build muscle. The nutrients that you're putting into your body, the proteins, the fats, the carbs, the macros, those calories, that is going to determine, how fast or slow that you gain muscle or fat or the body composition, but it's not going to determine whether you actually build muscle. Try eating your body weight in grams of protein. Try eating a good, clean source of carbohydrates all the time. Try eating good, clean sources of fat and not lifting weights, and see that you do not gain very much muscle, if any at all, and likely you will atrophy. So at the end of the day, exercise over everything, all right? And if I was to give you just a few actionable tips here, it is eat carbohydrates before your hypertrophy workouts, before your strength workouts, the day before. If you're going to eat any junk food or more simple carbohydrates, do it around your workout, okay? Try to do it around a workout, and try not to do it right before bed. And the last thing that I'll say is give your body a break. Give your body a break from the insulin spikes that you get from intaking too many carbohydrates too frequently. Give your hormone cycles, your hunger hormones a break. And each night, have dinner at a certain time, wake up, break the fast with good breakfast. And at the end of the day, let's keep this simple, everyone. Any parting words for you, Trisha?
No, I think just rewind and listen to what you just said again until it hits home, because I think it was really just perfect.
Okay, perfect. All right, sounds good, everybody. We're on YouTube, Burn Bootcamp Podcast on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe there. We really appreciate your subscription. It is like oxygen to Trisha and I. If you are not leaving comments and if you are not subscribing, then I don't know what we're gonna do, Trish. I don't know what we're gonna do. We can't keep. We need the fuel.
We need to hear from you, people.
We need to hear from you. All right. We love you guys. Take care. 2 claps on 2. 1, 2.